it is time for the review of X-Men Volume 1 by Jonathan Hickman. So this is the brand new X-Men series. This trade follows the House of X, Power of X stories, which we do have available at the library and the big book. No, it's Hickman's complete reset of the X-Men stories. The X-Men universe, new canon, new setup. I haven't read X-Men comics in God knows how long, and most of my knowledge comes from the 90s cartoon, to be honest. That's where I got into X-Men as a kid. So going into there, I do run into some characters that I don't know, but it was fine with it. I rode with it. They kind of explained who they were for the most part, even though I didn't necessarily remember their superhero name or anything. I would say this book, first off, would be really hard to jump into if you haven't read House of X, Power of 10. I think. I wanted to see if I could just jump into it without doing that. I end up listening to some like spoiler coverage of House of X, Power of 10 over at the Comic Pop YouTube channel. So while I didn't read the book, I did have a little bit of background going in. And while it started off where I was mostly okay, it got more and more complicated. Like, the world building on this is very big, and a lot's going on. They're in, like, you know, the future, the past. They got different types of, you know, humans, mutants, post-humans. Like, a lot's going on. Like, so I think you really have to read that first before you start this. That said, one, I really like the drawing. They had some really nice drawing in some of the issues, which is pretty cool. And this, you're not getting like one story in this, like one continuous story in this book. So what this book is really doing is like setting up storylines, setting up like, honestly, storylines that are going to have consequences for the X-Men. Or for the mutants. Phone. So there's 6 chapters in the interlude, so 6 issues in the interlude in there, and everyone sets up a different problem. So a different set of people that are going to end up being an issue for the X-Men. And each section kind of ends with the, you know, on that cliffhanger, like, oh, this is going to be bad kind of thing. You know, when this plays out, this is going to be bad. So it's kind of introducing you to, I wouldn't say what are going to be the, I mean, some of them are straight up villains. Some of the people they introduce, some of them are just kind of like plot situations, different things like that. Everything's a little bit different. If they're all different people, they're going to be different issues. But you're not really reading it for a complete story. You're reading it for additional setup, if that makes sense. So more another introduction to the world. I guess it makes sense because I believe this volume is called like Dawn of X. So it's more like Dawn of the X-Men's problems. And I shouldn't really say X-Men actually. So Dawn of the Mutants' problems, because in this book, all the mutants are living together on a sentient island named Krakoa, right? And they're stretching out their legs a little bit and running into some issues. So, who do I think this would be good for? Honestly, if you like X-Men, if you like X-Men and you're fine with moving on to new canon, I guess I should say too, because you can't hold on to like your old like canon. Like Charles is way different, and if you like, it's a lot of cosmic stuff. Really, they're in a like long drawn out war of humans. That's probably kind of how it's always been, but it feels more kind of war like. And Krakoa's kind of like a big old like sci-fi fantasy island in a way. So if you like science fiction, fantasy, and which of course, I mean, X-Men, right? They have powers. But also if you like more, if you're more on the cosmic side of, you like the cosmic stories more than like everyday on Earth, Bobby's going to school kind of thing. Because this doesn't really have any Bobby's going to school kind of thing. It's all very much like high level, on the high level. Like it's X-Men leadership, it's the like different governmental politicians, business leadership, some military organization leadership. It's all high level like organizations. There's not really much on the, there's actually none on like the everyday human or like maybe the everyday mutant. At least in this book you don't see any of that. So if you kind of want to like everyday person story, you're not going to get it in this one. But if you like really kind of high action space stuff with mutants, cosmic Marvel, then you'll like this a lot. Alright, so that's my short review. If you hang around, the spoiler discussion is next. Alright, welcome to the spoiler discussion. I'm just going to start at the beginning and go through, give a little spoiler recapping in here and give you my opinion. So, it starts off, it says then. It doesn't give you a time. I like how they do the times in terms of like then, now, or future, more farther future. Like they don't give you any dates. It's just kind of, it happened in the past, it'll happen in the future, it's happening now. When that is, don't know. But it just starts off with Professor X giving Scott his glasses, so he can open his eyes. And then it's a brave new world, so it's just starting off with listing, I guess you would say listing, oh geez, wrong side, who the current X-Men are. Current X-Men, right? And then it goes into each chapter. So each chapter, which are probably issues, has its own title, and each one sets up a different, what's going to become a different issue for the mutants. Like I said, I will call this book like 99 problems, right? Because every issue is a new problem for mutants, right? So the first one is called Pax Krakoa, and it just really talks about Krakoa and Orcus, and kind of introduce you to those two elements, or going into those two elements. So the X-Men are attacking Orcus facility. They're battling robots and to get through, and they get inside, and the human scientists have freaking turned themselves into apes. They give themselves some crazy shots and turn themselves into apes. Like, what the what? To fight them off, right? But I keep saying X-Men, but as I mentioned in the non-spoiler review, in the review section, it's not really so much X-Men, it's just mutants, mutant society, right? Because, I mean, you have with them, Stalin in white, Eric Lensher, Magneto, right, is with them. So, I mean, it's just all the mutants working in. So they are breaking into this facility so they can rescue some mutants that have been taken, right? And then at the same time, they also run across this weird girl who's very weird looking. I was like, her skin's all black, her hair's all white, and they're like, hey, what's this? They call her a post-human. What's this post-human doing in here? They're usually not out here, is what they say. That's kind of where they leave. They kind of drop that. And they decide not to follow her because they want to get all the young mutants back to Krakoa, which is apparently a living island that they all live on now. A nice, pretty living island. All the mutants live there. And they make portals to Krakoa using flowers that are from Krakoa. You can make portals. You can go into there. And it's pretty much that's where all the mutants live, including Scott, except for in Scott's case, he's living in a pretty cool, like, they give you a diagram in here too. This book has a lot of diagrams of different things, which actually I find helpful, especially because, like I said, the world building is pretty huge. Like, they give you a diagram of, like, Scott's compound on the moon. So he has his Krakoa thing to let him have a house on the moon, and then he can walk straight through that portal and go back to Earth where everybody else is. Yeah, and in here he gives his dad, who I'm like, I don't remember ever meeting Scott's dad. In my knowledge of X-Men history, I don't remember much about him, other than he's supposed to be human. And in this, he dresses hideously. Can I just say, I'm like, is that an ugly superhero costume? No, apparently that's just an ugly human costume. Ha! But he gives one to his dad, I guess. So it's one of the few, I take it in here, one of the few humans who can go and come hang out on their island. And then, so they talk about Krakoa a little bit there. And then they also talk about Orcus. So Orcus is made up of scientists from, like, Hammer and AIM and SHIELD and Hydra. Like, and they're pretty much making weapons to fight. They make weapons to fight mutants. Is their end goal. So, yeah. So the person who was running the facility they broke into was this crazy looking doctor man who just looks like a creepster. I mean, like, off the bat. He looks like 7 of 9 or something, like a Borg, but I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be all human there. He just wears funny glasses. Dr. Gregor. And in another facility they show at the end Dr. Gregor's wife, right, who's also a scientist working for Orcus. And he dies in the Orcus facility when the X-Men came and take out the facility, I guess. But at the end she says, I can bring him back. Like, they have she has a way, dun dun dun, that's the end of their dun dun dun. They're bringing back this doctor, right? There's another scientist. So from that first section, you just kind of, I guess it's more of a, if you didn't read House of X Power of 10, here's like the main conflict. There's the Orcus, made up all the scientists. They're trying to get humans, and all the mutants are working together. They live on Krakoa. That's pretty much it. They're trying to stop Orcus and rescue mutants. But you can tell very much for this first section, like, the mutants really have a lot of animosity towards the humans, which I'm used to that from, like, Magneto and such, but not so much from, like, everybody else. It kind of just, they feel very much high above, you know, like superior to humans. It's the vibe they give off. And so you're kind of like, okay, that's a, you're putting on a little strong there. Like, I'm seeing the whole book is like, I think except for, is there any part that's from a non-mutant point of view? Pretty sure like everything's, well, except for like the Orcus scientists, pretty much everything's from the mutant point of view. But they seem very, like, at least like back in the day, you root for the X-Men because they're like the underdogs in a way, and in here they just seem very, they're on the level of the people that they're both equally hating each other, it seems like. And so it's like, you don't really, I'm rooting for the X-Men just because I'm like, oh, X-Men, they're heroes. But in this, they just all feel kind of gray. So it's like, I'm not gonna root, you know, you don't want to root for the humans that are, because they obviously got a plan to, like, I'm gonna destroy the mutants. But then the mutants don't seem to be much better right now, especially as you go through the book. So I don't know how you would feel about that X-Men, I guess, if you're coming in. Second section is the Summoner. So that introduces another big issue that's going to be an issue for the X-Men, aka there is another island, another sentient island that pops up, apparently Krakoa. And this island love each other. And on that island is a currently closed portal to another world called Araco. Don't know anything about it. Don't know if it showed up in X-Men lore in the past, because once again, hasn't read X-Men comics since God knows when. But Apocalypse knows about it. He pops up at the end, and you find out that, you know, it's something Apocalypse related. But anyway, since the island pops up, their island starts moving towards this other island. They're like, what the hey? Whoever I guess it is, there's only apparently one person who can actually communicate with the island, and they're off planet. So Cyclops and his kids, Cable, and don't know her superhero name, but her real name is Rachel, go to investigate, and they run across. Let me see if we can find a nice picture of him. That doesn't look. They run across the summoner there. And then what he can summon is demons from, oh shoot, hold on. Did they say from the other world? So he can summon demons to like protect him if people attack him. So you do get to see his power for a bit, because in an effort to be friendly, Cable does something stupid. He thinks they're attacking him. He does bring out his crazy demon summoning powers for a bit, but they squash that miscommunication and kind of make nice for a bit. But then you find out he is a child of war being one of the horsemen of the apocalypse, right? So he's kind of one of Apocalypse's, I guess he would be grandchildren, right? And he's saying he's worried about the place that the island connects to, Araco, and there's something's bad gonna happen there, right? And Apocalypse is like, I will protect you, all my children, and those on Araco, wherever that is. So that kind of ends there. Dun, dun, dun. Like, what's that trouble gonna be, right? The third one. So far you're introduced to Orcus, and their like kind of scientific military weaponist issues. Whatever's gonna come through the island, right? Eventually, probably gonna be a big issue. And then the issue I thought was the most fun, which is called horticulture. Just because it's some regular human villains, but I thought it was kind of a fun one, because those villains turn out to be like, you can see there, some like 80-something-year-old like botanist who were working for some shady corporations, and then decided at some point in time that they're gonna make a group that's gonna return the earth to the plants. So they have a plan where they're gonna rapidly depopulate the earth, and so that the plants can take back over. And they're worried about, now the Krakoa showed up, like, is that somehow gonna ruin their plans? So they like somehow break into their gate system and go to where they're growing some of the plants so they can get samples and test them, right? So I don't know, these characters are fun. They really got that older person vibe, where it's just like, I don't care, I'll say whatever I want. like they do not care. They're not scared of the mutants. They're like, whatever. They're saying all kinds of stuff, and they're fun for being villains. Of course, in true fashion, because you gotta fight them another day, they get away, which is, I was just kind of like, I mean, they are old ladies. They do have some, like goo weapons or whatever, but they're old ladies. Scott Blast should have, he could have fried them or something. Like, they should have been able to take care of these old ladies, but they want them to pop back up later on, I guess. So they're just leaving them, let them escape for story convenient purposes, so they can come back and be a pain in the butt later, right? Dun, 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 dun. Here's some human, like, botanists, terrorists. They're going to be a problem for mutants, right? So the next one is it's the one and only interlude in the middle. It's about Mr. Essex, who, to be honest with you, I'm going to show you Mr. Essex here. Can I show you? Gotcha. I don't know anything about. I don't recall running across him before. But apparently his power, I guess, is that he can make copies of himself. And he says he promised Xavier that he would make copies of himself. I don't know why that's a bad thing, or why Xavier wouldn't want him to, but apparently he did, right? So, but he found himself a nice little loophole. He said I can't make duplicates of myself, but he didn't say I couldn't make duplicates of other people. So he's going through some other possible mutants. Looks like very powerful. I don't know if they're all Omega level mutants, but maybe they are. He can make copies of, right? And I think they are all Omega level mutants, but he settles on Franklin Richards, right? At the boom boom. So he's gonna make a copy of Franklin Richards. So it's kind of like, okay, what is he gonna do with a copy of Franklin Richards? Like, dun dun dun, Mr. X is gonna be a problem, I'm assuming there, right? The next issue here, global economics. It's more about the human, their human issues. Well, their issues with like human governments. So there's like a World Economic Forum. The mutants are invited. They explain in this section, if you haven't read the House of X Power 10, that Krakoa's only been a mutant nation, for like a month. So, I mean, this just happened, and it's kind of like, well, the humans don't really know how to take it, and humans, you know, don't know what to make of it. They don't know what they're going to do about it, kind of thing, right? But they've been invited to this World Economic meeting. It's really like a little dinner. It's actually not that many people who are there. There's only maybe about 8 people. But it's some politicians, some business people, that kind of thing. So they invite Xavier. So well, who comes is Xavier, Magneto, and Apocalypse, right? And then Cyclops and a mutant named Gorgon. His name is Tommy. His real name is Tommy, who I don't know much about Gorgon. Let me think. Nope, I don't know anything about Gorgon. They come as their bodyguards, right? So they go to this meeting. Some of the people seem to be like pleasant to them, some a little standoffish, and they talk politics, right? About, you know, like, oh, having this new mutant state is kind of destabilizing, or like what's their end game with it, and about some medicines that they're planning on selling to them and stuff. And pretty much, I mean, Magneto does most of the talking, and they pretty much talk about how, you know, humans are short-sighted, like they forget their own history, they repeat their mistakes, that the mutants have learned all their like kind of political and economic tricks, and they're going to use that to eventually kind of rule the world, if it makes, yeah, if that makes sense. They're going to get the political power. They're not necessarily going to fight with fists, but they're going to learn how to get political and economic power by, you know, selling them their stuff and, you know, that kind of things, to eventually the point where they are the ones in power, right? And let's see, so it's like let me see if there's any other yeah, he's like, and the Magneto says in the past, you know, he would have used he would have shown how strong he was physically, how strong his powers were. He would have used he said he was to seize their weapons and turn them on them, but now he's learned how to use money and influence, you know, the way humans do, so he's going to use that to kind of take over, right? And then at the same time this is going on, while they were at the table, Charles felt that there was some strike teams in the building that they were planning on calling on them. So they sent out Cyclops and Gorgon to take care of them, which they do. And at the end, like Charles said, he points out at some point, like and the politician guy, one of the politicians, is he a politician guy? One of them are kind of like trying to see where the strike team is, and he's like, they're not coming. And he's like, you already tried to assassinate me once, and now you have this team here. I still want humans and mutants to live together one day, but, you know, like, I've learned, at this point, he's learned his lesson about the old way he was trying to do it wasn't working, and that they need to learn, too, that the next time they try to pull something on them, that they're gonna fight back. Yeah. So this is more like the human political side of it, I guess you could say. Although it's kind of weird because the people they have at the table, so to speak, it's not really like super representative of like world government. It's literally like 5 people, half of which are just like business people. I think there's only like 1 or 2 politicians, so it's like I guess it's just more to set up their plan. They have like, they're gonna use money and influence to get to the top and control things through finances, I guess is their plan, instead of just trying to like take over by brute. Well, get and keep their independence by brute force, I take it. All right, next section, into the vault. Into the vault. So into the vault, they follow, Wolverine is following the girl that they called a post-human here, right? You see, like, she can just touch people and get them to do what she wants, which is, you know, seems like a power a mutant would have, but apparently she's not a mutant. She's a human, like some kind of like augmented human. And he follows her all the way until she gets to the vault, which I thought looked pretty dang cool. So this is the vault, and above it is like a big-headed sentinel up there. And so he gets there, and he's like, crap. You know, he's reporting back. She went to the vault. So they're like, okay. And then they decide they gotta get in there. So they talk about, like, they think these, like, post-humans are gonna be the biggest threat to mutants. That's what they say. They don't really explain why, but they just say that they are. So maybe they explained why in the previous book, or they'll explain why in future, but in here they just say they are, so we got to learn more about them. We barely know anything about them. They usually don't come out of this boat by themselves or anything, right? So they decide they're going to try to send in Darwin, shoot, hold on, who's the other person? Darwin, Sync, and X-23 into the vault. The reason they're sending them, they said, because the vault, inside the vault, time moves a lot faster. So might only be a day outside in the real world, could be like a month or whatever inside of the vault. So since Darwin can adapt, X-23 can live for a long time, and Sync can copy somebody else's power, so one of their powers, then they have a better chance of surviving in there, living long enough in there to come out and tell them, you know, report back. So they cause a big distraction so that the AI defenses will be distracted while these 3 sneak in with apparently a translocator that they stole from Orcus. So once they get inside, you can see right there, the vault scans them and say they're a contagion, and say it's going to, you know, respond to protect the city, but you don't know what that response is, but you know it's bad because he's like, oh crap, kind of thing. So it leaves off that there clipper in your hair. So you don't know what's going in there. So, and you see, it says much later, but you see Scott talking to, it looks like it's an AI of some sort. And he's like, so how long has it been inside the vault? It's been 3 months outside in the real world. He thinks it's been like 500 years inside. So they've been in there a long time. They're not out yet. For them, it's been more than 500 years, and they're still in there. 3 months in the real world. They too talk about inside the vault. They say, like, outside the vault, humans are, you know, evolving biologically. But inside the vault, it's some kind of, they said, human adaptation along technological lines, not evolutionary. So there's some kind of, like, human technology hybrid evolution thing going on. It's making, like, weird technologically advanced humans, which I guess why that girl looked the way she did, even though she was human. So they're worried about that, what humans are doing in there, and they want to find out what's going on. And they do make a special point to mention about Sync, that he was resurrected. So they it's gonna pop up again, but apparently the mutants have some kind of resurrection ability now. Not ability, they're doing it, technology, I guess, where they can bring people back. And they specifically say that they brought Sync back after a while. He was dead for a while, I guess, enough time where it was weird for him that the time, how different things were in the new time, and that he's not like the most stable about it. Like, he's physically, he's fine, mentally not so much. So I think they brought this up specifically because him being inside this vault for more than 500 years and then coming back out, who knows what he's gonna be like, right? Seems like it's gonna be a problem, right? Plus whatever the city does to them, problem. Plus whatever the post-human vault plan is, problem, right? So when the girl goes in to the vault, it recognizes her. It says, as a child of the vault, I guess, is Serafina, who were previously captured. The other people who were in her pod were previously deceased. They give us like this big old report that is confusing to me. Shows that there are up to 600 pods, and they have all the children have different like levels that can be upgraded or downgraded or restored. Different, it looks like, jobs, like soldier, teacher. Don't know what's going on with there. It's just stuff that I'm sure will come up in a future book. And so the vault's doing analysis, and it says that they need at least 3 children to occupy and subjugate the external environment, the world. So they did say they usually don't come out by themselves, so I don't know what happened to the other children. I mean, they show some here, but I don't know if these are the ones that got killed. I don't know what's going on there, but apparently they need some more to do bad stuff. There you go. So that's kind of that section. And then the very last section, so that's the, I guess they would be, they did the human, and now they've done the post-human threat, right? And then last but not least would kind of be, I guess, threat from inside, a threat from other humans, which in this case is Mystique. So this book opens with Mystique talking to this lady who apparently is her wife, named Irene, that totally looks like a Court of Owlmass to me from Tom King's Batman run, but like a weird one without the beak. Hopefully she looks like something underneath. I don't know what this is, but it says it's in the past. She's talking to Mystique. She's like, I'm gonna tell you something, you need to believe me. Long after I'm dead in the future, you know, the mutants are gonna have like an island, and they're gonna come to you and promise you whatever, you know, your heart's desire. If you help them do some stuff, they're gonna not really want to give it to you because they're gonna be scared. But when this happens, you have to remember, you have to bring me back. And if you can't bring me back, then you have to burn that place to the ground, right? Which is obviously, I mean, she's saying bring me back or burn Krakoa to the ground, right? Which would be bad for what they're planning. So that's kind of, and they kind of do the, I'm going to tell you something, and then the bad news of bringing back, burn to the ground. They separate that front bookend, front and end of the issue. And in the middle is a little bit more about what they wanted her to do. So they wanted her to break into one of the Orchid's bases and plant one of the Krakoa flowers so they can have a portal in. They'd had her do that sometime in the past. They spaced her. Charles resurrected her. And then she goes back through to check if it's right and sees that they have built something. They were hoping to destroy the mother lode, which I remember from the spoiler video I watched, that's like a facility that makes sentinels, I believe. But apparently Dr. Gregor, the female one, has built something called Nimrod, which I take it as very bad, right? Hoping they would have stopped that. They were hoping they would have stopped it, but they didn't, and it's growing. And I mean, they built it. Bad news bear, I guess. So I don't know what the heck Nimrod is, but it's something bad, I take it, because they don't like it. And then you can see too at the beginning that Orcus has bases like everywhere, like in space. They're like, and by Venus and on Mercury. What did I say, Mercury? But by Venus and on blah 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 blah, and Mercury's orbit, and they have like all these different Orchid bases everywhere. Sentinel City, where they're digging up stuff to build sentinels, and they have lots of weapons like all around, right? So they're like a big deal. And oh shoot, I forgot. I said I was gonna come back to her, but I do not. Oops, where? Boom, back to her. But I didn't, because I totally already forgot what the heck. So she's an AI of some sort, it seems. Although she looks very humanoid, I'm taking it she's an AI. Omega. There you go. He's working with Orcus. So, or I guess she could be a post-human. Don't know. They don't really, she's there. She's working with Orcus scientists, but they don't really explain her. So, but it seems like everything Orcus is doing is bad news for the mutants. So like I said, this book is a setup of problems to come. Problems from the humans, the post-humans, mutants, Mystique and Irene, whatever is going on there. Orcus, the horticulture group, and Mr. Essex. Problems. So actually I found, like I said, even though I enjoyed the horticulture most just because it was funny. Like the horticulture ladies were pretty badass and funny. Every story, every setup was very interesting. Like I said, it feels like it's a big world, a lot of world building probably went into House of X Power of 10 for the setup. So there's a lot going on in a lot of places with a lot of people, and they all are very interesting stories, and we want to follow, like, to see what happens in the future. I don't know how they're going to handle them, like, and if it's each book, they're going to address all the stories in each book, like each issue or each book when they come out. I don't know how they're going to handle, because that is a lot of different storylines going on, but I think they're very, they're all very interesting setups. You want to see kind of where it's going to go. So I have talked for a very, very long time, and so I'm going to dump this in there and say, if you want to like brand new X-Men story, man, go for it. And if you do like the series and you want to know what else you can read, then check out the Read Alikes next.